love that sound. Good morning. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix. I'm Gary Ezel. My pronouns are he, him, and I am your worship associate today. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix strives to be a spiritual community for our time, one that is theologically diverse, radically inclusive, and justice-centered. Our doors swing wide to embrace all who seek a welcoming place. May our worship today be a source of inspiration, a comfort in challenging times, and a call to action. Our minister, Reverend Christine Dance, is on sabbatical until the end of July. During this radical sabbatical, many guest preachers are joining us for 1 to 3 weeks. This morning, we are once again privileged to have Joe Jencks with us. Joe is a 25-year veteran of the international folk circuit, an award-winning songwriter, and a celebrated vocalist based in Chicago. Joe, thank you for joining us. And now your song.
Here are my home.
standing and join me in reciting our covenant as Paisley Rossetti lights our chalice. If you're watching remotely and have a chalice with you, please light it with us. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to share our strength in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. Please be seated. If you are new here, we are so glad you have found us. Each Sunday is a little different, so please be sure to come back and see us a few times. You can get to know us better that way. I have a few announcements from our civic engagement team. Save the date of Thursday, May 1st for the International Workers' Day March. There'll be information about that at the back after the service. Also, remember to observe the total retail blackout day this Friday, April 18th. Shop local or don't shop at all. Now, our board co-president, Bunny Hodis, has a message for us about our Close the Gap campaign.
Wow, thanks. Good morning, I'm Bunny Hodis. My pronouns are she, her. I am one of your co-presidents of the Board of Trustees for this wonderful congregation. I also serve as the board liaison to the Stewardship Committee. This ask today comes from the board as we are your elected stewards for the business of our community. This is my third and final ask in this trilogy to close the gap in our pledge campaign for our next fiscal year's budget, which begins July 1st, 2025. We started 3 weeks ago needing $135,000 to close the gap. Thanks to those who have already contacted us, we are now down to approximately $106,000. It's still quite a gap. We need more of you to participate in this lift. Remember that this is a pledge. You have through June 30th of 2026 to fulfill your pledge. The how is this. You received an email this week with details. The information is also on the website and in our letter Compass. The important part is why. UUCP is all about communal care. The definition of that in this context is a community who holds us accountable to whom we want to be. I heard that definition on a national UUA Zoom call this week. Our leaders are telling us UUs need to be a stronger, louder voice for a progressive faith. We need to be proud of each other and our values and give them voice. UUCP and all of you need to be here now to meet this moment. As I was reminded last night, we stand on the shoulders of those who come before. Who will be standing on our shoulders? Longtime congregants, past folks returning, and new people are all talking about the good feeling and energy that this congregation is providing. People around the country look to UUCP and our staff to provide examples and assistance of how to better move through our experiences of this time. Our staff is asked to collaborate with national organizations on programming. We at UUCP benefit from their contributions both here inside our congregation and their larger involvement. These last few weeks have talked about love and connection that we extend to each other. We have created a space to not be perfect, to learn, to grow, to be totally vulnerable by falling flat on our face and then helped up and invited back in without judgment or criticism. We're not perfect, but here, all of us together offer grace. UUCP needs us now. We need each other. The wider community needs us. Our future generations need us. Please pledge to give what you can now, this week. We are the family we've been waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bunny. We do need to support this beloved community. And now let us begin our worship in earnest. And Joe has opening words for us.
Please join me, if you want, in reading these words from Maya Angelou. The thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud, somebody who may not look like you, may not call God the same name you call God, if they call God at all. They may not dance your dances or speak your language, but be a blessing to somebody. I'm convinced of this: good done anywhere is good done everywhere.
And now I invite anyone who would like to come down for a together time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Resendez, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry here at UUC Phoenix. Let's see. So today's story has a little bit of a problem. It's that the person that you're going to hear the most about in the story isn't the main character. The main character is everyone around her. Just remember that while I'm telling this story, okay? Even though you're going to hear the most about Suri. I'm going to step right here. Suri was 8 years old. And being 8 was very, very hard. And I don't know if you all remember, especially those of you who are so far away from being 8 years old, but being 8 is hard for a lot of people. Educators in the room know there's this thing that happens called the 9-year change, where chemically, emotionally, and identity-wise, 8 can be real, real hard. There's extra yelling, screaming, there's teeth gritting, there's stubbornness, and adults don't like stubbornness in kids. 8 can be hard. So Suri was dealing with 8. And there are other times in our life where we deal with the same thing. Anyone remember being 16? Yeah. Or other things like if there's big traumas going on in our lives, or if things are too exciting, or when we start to do things like our bodies start changing and we can't walk as well, or we can't hear as well, we get really stormy. And there's all sorts of times in life when we get stormy. And Suri, our little 8-year-old, happened to be living in one of those stormy times. And what that meant was that almost every day, Suri would act in a way that brought the thunderclouds. Now, it's a cloudy day here in Phoenix, so I'm sure you all can think about what this is like. But think about what it happens when you're in a room and something happens and the room goes and suddenly it feels like there's gray clouds over it. And the mood changes and things are hard. One day, Suri was in school, and stuff got knocked off of her desk, and she immediately jumped up and was like, "Hey, that's my stuff!" But they were in the middle of a reading lesson, and that didn't feel very good, and the whole room put their books down and kind of looked at her. Suri. That felt really yucky. But luckily, Suri's teacher was really skilled and said, "Okay, everyone, Suri jumped up, let's all jump up." And everyone stood up, and they shook their bodies, shook their bodies so much they ended up playing hokey pokey. And all of those clouds that Surrey had brought in, whoosh, 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 blew away really quick, almost as soon as everyone started shaking their bodies. Another day, Surrey was on the bus home and got into a little bit of an argument with her best friend. She looked at her best friend and she said, "Jack, I think you smell terrible, and you're kind of ugly." Jack looked at Surrey and said, "Surrey, the way you're treating me is not okay, but I know you're my friend. I don't want you to treat me that way, but let's try to stay friends. If you can't treat me nice right now, that's okay, but I don't want to sit near you while you're being mean to me." And Surrey stayed cloudy, but you know what? Jack and the whole bus didn't. And Jack moved over to another seat and let Surrey sit on her own, and her clouds rumbled and rumbled and rumbled, but then the rumbling became the rolling of the bus. And Surrey looked out that window and watched the power lines go by and watched the grass, and Surrey's clouds started to drift away too. There was another day when Surrey was at home with her brother. And her brother was taking forever to set the table, to do anything, to use the bathroom, to close the door, to put the groceries away. He was just not being helpful. And Surrey was mad at him, but she didn't say anything. She just walked around like this and made sure that everyone knew she was mad. Because she was powerful. She didn't have to say anything. It made the whole house filled with clouds. And that storm rumbled and rumbled and rumbled. And everyone knew that Surrey was mad at her brother. But those clouds were affecting the whole house. So Surrey's dad decided to make a very special dinner. The dinner was both Jack's favorite foods and Surrey's favorite foods. And Dad didn't ask anyone to set the table. Dad set the table himself, cooked it all, and just said, "Jack, Surrey, it's time to eat." And they got to the table, and they were so excited to see their favorite foods that they started talking and laughing because that yummy, delicious food was filling their bellies. And it made them feel better. It made Surrey feel happier. And she got to watch her brother be happy about food. And they just started laughing and joking. And as they told each laugh and joke, those clouds blew away. Each of these times, no one said to Surrey, "Hey, it's okay that you're being a jerk. Keep being a jerk. It's fine." Nobody said that. Nobody said, "Surrey, change your behavior and your mood right now." They said, "Your behavior is not helping." And nobody at any point said, "What you're feeling is wrong." Right? So Surrey never had to feel ashamed. Even the day that Surrey stepped on her glasses and was mad at herself. And she felt so upset, and the clouds were everywhere, and she had lightning striking at everyone who went by, even her pet cat. She still didn't have to feel ashamed. Because sometimes the chemicals in our body and the emotions in our heart and the thoughts in our brain just make us stormy. But luckily, we have people around us. We have our main characters who can tell us things like, "Hey, let's shake our bodies and shift this mood. Hey, the way you're treating me isn't good, but I still want to be in community with you." They can set the table for us so that we can have a joyful place to meet with someone. Or they can just say, "Yeah, your glasses are broke. That sucks. Let's figure out how to fix them." Right? In all of these situations, the main character helped blow those clouds away so that Surrey could get through that terrible, wonderful, tumultuous, growing fireworks of a time called being 8. And here's the secret. It's not just about being 8. Some days, it's about someone cutting you off in traffic. Some days, it's about your clothes not fitting right. Or being Addie, who is 8. Oh my gosh. Some days, it's just about being a human And we all need some main characters around us to help us blow away those clouds. So if you all would practice with me for a second. Thank you.
Each week, we split our offering between this congregation and an organization that shares our values. For April, our Share the Plate partner is the Singletons. I would like to invite Jody Boyd from the Singletons to tell us more about this amazing organization. Jody?
Thank you for inviting me out today. The Singletons support single-parent families battling cancer. We actually just turned 19 on April 1st. I started the organization out of my home. I grew up just on the other side of the mountain here on 52nd Street in Thomas, and had a childhood friend by the name of Michelle Singleton who passed away from breast cancer, but she was also a single mom of 4 children. So during that time, I would double my dinners and bring it over to her home, or pick up an extra laundry detergent, paper towels, toilet paper, and drop it off in the house. Just to help her and know that she was surrounded by a community. Now, 19 years later, we have a community center on 28th Street in Bell. We help about 75 families at a time all across Maricopa County. And 3 years ago, we started branching out into Tucson. So we're now supporting 26 families at Diamond Children's Hospital. All of those families are headed by a single parent and have a child in the home with cancer. So all of our families receive a lot of the same things that friends and family did for Michelle. We have a commercial kitchen now at our community center, and volunteers come in and pack meal kits together so that families can enjoy a nice, nutritious dinner at home that doesn't take very much time to put together, and we're really promoting spending time spent as a family. We also restock the home with those essential supplies: paper towels, toilet paper, laundry detergent. I call laundry detergent liquid gold, because if you have children in the house, you know that you go through a lot of it, but it is expensive. So really our goal is to make sure that these families know that they have a community that's there to support them while they're going through a really difficult time. We also like to have fun family activities, so we'll be hosting a Mother's Day event at the community center. We have a back-to-school drive with a barbecue and water slides, and during the holidays, we adopt every single one of our families out through community partners to fulfill their wish lists for the holidays. So again, none of those celebrations that happen in everybody else's home go by the wayside when our families are going through a very difficult time in their lives. We even have birthday boxes just to make sure that in that box everything is there to be able to celebrate at home and have a party, including a little cake and a gift. So anybody who would like to come out and take a tour, I'm very proud of our hub on 28th Street and Bell. I would love to be able to show it to you and kind of explain a little bit more the moving parts about why we do what we do. But I always say that the Singletons is a family, and we are there to walk alongside these families on their journey. So thank you for having me here today.
Wow, what a wonderful organization. For all that you give, we are so grateful. Ushers, thank you for your willing hands in helping us pass the plate. Our lives are interconnected, and this community is a place where we can share significant milestones, joys, and sorrows. If you are on Zoom, feel free to put a note in the chat. I already have some cards from folks in the room. If you want your joy or sorrow read next week, use the cards that are on the table in the back of the sanctuary. So, first of all, there's a note from Sam. Thank yous to Donna Featherston and Susan Morris for their help at the wonderful concert last night. That wonderful was my comment, but it would be Sam's also. From Jen Cody, my sweet Ellie turned 9 on April 10th. Happy birthday, Ellie. You are so very loved. Speaking of birthdays, Jan Kaplan says, today is my 73rd birthday. Which means I've been a UU for 68 years. And from Emily Helton Riley, so glad I still have UUCP as my home, even after a hiatus. And some sorrows. Mary Margaret McGee lets us know that my girlhood friend, Margaret, died last Thursday. I was with her in Denver and can't believe she's gone. And Liz Merchant lets us know that a sorrow. My niece was riffed from her job with HHS recently, but she already has now a new job by the state of New Mexico in Santa Fe. So ups and downs. Let me see if there's anything on Zoom. No. May our joys and our sorrows, those named and those held in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, help us draw closer and care for each other. And now Joe will lead us in a musical meditation.
This is a song that I wrote for the ordination of a dear friend, Pat Trudeau, in Toronto in the fall of 2019. None of us really understanding what was around the corner in 2020. And the song became a bit of a personal anthem, a mantra, if you will, based on the writings of Julian of Norwich. So the choir graciously worked on this. Benji and Talise worked on this, and it's a pleasure to be here singing this. All will be well.
Call you wherever you may dwell. All will be well, all will be well. We gather here to witness and affirm the harmony of spirit and of heart. Manifest within you, brought forth from deepest hope, to be a force of healing in this world. All will be well. All will be well. life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well, all will be well. You find your purpose in service to a light that emanates from each and every being that is life. We see the gifts that blossom in your care, and the people who are nourished by your love. All will be well. All will be well. All will be well. All manner of things will be well. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well, all will be well. May you go forth to mend what has been broken, to feed those who are hungry, to quench the ones who thirst for a world of compassion, for mercy that abounds, and a place to dwell in sacred gentleness. All will be well. All will be well. All will be well. All manner of things will be well. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well, all will be well. All will be well, all will be well. All manner of things will be well. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well, all will be well. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well, all will be well. All will be well, all will be well.
I'm starting with an excerpt from Barack Obama's Nobel lecture from December 10th, 2009. The promotion of human rights cannot be about exhortation alone. At times, it must be coupled with painstaking diplomacy. I know that the engagement with repressive regimes lacks the satisfying purity of indignation. But I also know that sanctions without outreach, condemnation without discussion, can carry forward only a crippling status quo. No repressive regime can move down a new path unless there is the choice of an open door, end quote. I love that phrase, the satisfying purity of indignation. Indignation has been known to appear in my house. Easter is approaching, as you can tell from the appearance of all manner of brightly colored confections in the stores. Now, my wife, Anne, is very, very fond of one particular treat, and they're called Peeps. Peeps? These yellow marshmallow birdies, okay? You know about Peeps? Okay, sure. Now, she specifically has always had and always wants the yellow birdies. Now, that used to be the only thing that was available, but marketing being what it is, now there are all manner of peeps. But if I were to come home, with a purple bunny, I would be greeted with indignation. Those would not be proper peeps, not the pure peeps. Indignation is like peeps. It's delicious, sweet, tasty, and totally without nutritional value. If you have work to do, if you've got a relationship to fix, you will not go far on a diet of peeps. You will do much better with an open mind and an open heart. When I come home on Sundays, Anne usually asks, "How was the service?" And today I will say, "It was excellent, and I brought you something."
Well, it is absolutely my joy and my privilege to be with you for a second Sunday here at UUCP. It's very rare that I have the privilege to be with one congregation for 2 weekends in a row. Thank you for the incredibly gracious welcome. Everybody on staff, all of the volunteers, especially Benji and Katie and Gary and Sam, Mary Margaret and Carrie and Glenn and Terry. Like there's a whole list of people that this has been in process for months. And Bunny, and I could just keep going with the list, but there are so many amazing people in this congregation that are each taking responsibility in one form or another for the shape of the congregation. There is an old story that I remember from my childhood where the bishop that was presiding over the construction of the cathedral at Chartres was wandering through and asking what different artisans and craftspeople were doing. And he gets to the glazers, and they explain the process of blowing and rolling and cutting glass, and the metal workers who were creating the lead that goes in between the colored glass pieces to make the windows, and the iron workers that are building the frameworks. And he spoke with the masons who described the precision and the work of cutting stone. And he spoke with the woodworkers about the pews that they were building and sconces and all kinds of things. He spoke with various people about each aspect of the work. But at the end of the day, he saw an old man pushing a broom, and he asked the gentleman what he was doing as he was cleaning up the work site. And he says, "Your Eminence, I'm building a cathedral." And that was what the bishop was waiting to hear, was someone who saw the big picture. And I have to tell you, as a guest in this congregation, I see many people sort of silently moving through the community here, each of them with an understanding that they are building beloved community. No matter how small or significant their role is in the community, it is a joy to witness such a thriving and healthy and functioning community. So thank you for your stewardship. Thank you for your work in holding this space. And thank you for deciding to do a radical sabbatical so that I can come be with you. I really love that. Thank you. The good we seek, the good we hope for. This line, I asked Sam to read this last weekend, this quote from Madeleine Albright. I've spent a lifetime looking for remedies to all manner of life's problems. I'm going to skip a little bit. She talks about how she's grown weary of the people who say that everything is too complicated or too nuanced to ever really understand the truth. I believe we can recognize truth when we see it, just not at first and not without ever relenting in our efforts to learn more. This is because the goal we seek and the good we hope for comes not as some final reward, but as the hidden companion to our quest. It is not what we find, but the reason we cannot stop looking and striving that tells us why we are here. As I look around this congregation, as I've had the privilege of witnessing congregational life for a couple of weeks, I do see a good number of people here who are less concerned with outcome and more concerned with process, that the journey matters. And that's moving to me. I also, Gary was kind enough to offer some reflections on a quote that I wanted him to share. This piece, he zeroed in on it beautifully when Obama said, "I know that engagement with repressive regimes lacks the satisfying purity of indignation, but I also know that sanctions without outreach, condemnation without discussion, can carry forward only a crippling status quo. No repressive regime can move down a new path unless it has the choice of an open door." In 2009, I don't think that President Obama would have imagined how prescient this quote might seem to us in 2025. But it speaks to the work of diplomacy and the notion that self-satisfaction and indignation are really not helpful tools in bridge building. It's okay to have our feelings. Katie gave us that beautiful narrative about, hey, nobody's trying to tell you you can't feel what you are feeling. But if we want to go into the world as bridge builders, as consensus builders, as peacemakers, as diplomats, there's a different kind of call. And it is to have our feelings in places that will be useful for us to have them, so that when we show up in places where it's not useful for us to have our feelings, that we have spent some time with that beforehand. We are able to communicate clearly. I love what Katie said about the fact that behavior that was troubling was interrupted, but without shame, without finger wagging, with clear communication, with surprise kindness. It is amazing to me the work of diplomacy that can happen through a good potluck, through a random act of kindness, through good music. We have tools in our hands, every one of us, that invite us into being diplomats. And I'm not clear that there has been a time in my life when there was a greater need for more people to take on the personal responsibility of diplomacy. Not that we surrender our views, we don't surrender our goals. I'm with Madeleine Albright. I think there is truth, and that truth is knowable. I think there is right and wrong, and that right and wrong are discernible. But there is a requirement if we want to build enough consensus to have forward momentum in our spiritual communities, in our political communities, in our civil communities. We have to find a way to hold space for many divergent viewpoints and still have a forward process. I think Unitarian Universalists are somewhat uniquely skilled at doing this, at least at trying. Sometimes we don't always succeed, but we keep making the effort to hold space for divergent points of view while choosing to travel together on the journey. I was asked to offer some remarks, to preach and sing at a Unitarian Universalist congregation in New Jersey. And in the weeks leading up to my arrival, quite the controversy had evolved in the congregation. There was a more conservative member of the congregation who was viewed as a bit of an odd duck in the community. He was not politically with the orthodoxy of the Unitarian Universalist world, but he did understand community building activities. And he wanted to get the board and the congregation to sign off on hosting a pig roast in their parking lot and use congregational money to pay for it. This created quite the battle within the congregation, which came to a head only a day or two before I arrived. and was somehow thrust into the position as guest artist and preacher of bringing some peace into the circumstance. And it was an interesting challenge and a beautiful thing to witness. The gentleman who wanted to host the pig roast understood that this used to be a community church. People used to walk to church. The people who were members of the congregation, many of them lived in the neighborhood. And it had become a commuter church where almost nobody who went to that church lived in the neighborhood. The demographics of the neighborhood had shifted. It was largely Afro-Caribbean, Latino, Latina, Latine. It was very different than what it had been when that church was built. And this gentleman understood that if you want to extend the hand of friendship to people, that sometimes food is the best way to do that. And you don't take people who are unsure about showing up and make them eat food that they're not clear about. When they read what I would refer to as the apophatic definition on the casserole dish that lists all of the things that are not in the casserole dish, not everybody's going to receive that as a sign of welcome. You know, a quinoa, kale, and tofu salad is not everybody's cup of tea. It doesn't mean you shouldn't bring it to the potluck, but I did appreciate that while trying to franchise more of the community into the life of the congregation, or at a minimum, build alliances so that there could be some solid interfaith dialogue and interfaith work in the community, he said, let us meet our neighbors where they are at. Rather than ask them to come to where we are, let's meet them where they are at. And a pig roast is a thing that our neighbors will recognize as good. They will show up and they will engage with us. And it was so controversial. There were many vegetarians and vegans in the congregation that objected to congregational money being spent on a pig and the barbarism of roasting it in their parking lot. And they seemed unable to get past their personal ideas, which hold validity. But so does extending the hand of friendship in a language that people will understand. Like the father setting the table for the younglings in conflict with their favorite foods. Inviting a dialogue that starts with goodness, that starts with abundance, that starts with joy. It was both a beautiful and terrifying thing when I received a phone call in 2009 inviting me to link up with the U.S. State Department for a cultural ambassador tour in the Caribbean. This came about because I said yes to a gig 4 years earlier in a strip mall in Florida. It was somebody had the idea they wanted to produce a folk music concert series midweek in this strip mall because they had a courtyard and a sound stage, and they had this space, and I said yes to it. Unbeknownst to me, one of the U.S. liaisons for Albania, a volunteer with the U.S. State Department, came to my concert, was moved by what I shared, and began talking me up to people in the State Department. And 4 years later, Benji will attest, this is how it works for us. You never know, you say yes to so many oddball things, and you never know where they're going to lead. In the rearview mirror, it sometimes seems like a straight line, like, oh, I can trace how I got from here to here to here to here. But when you're traveling that path, it feels a little bit more like being a squirrel on meth. And I was very surprised to receive that phone call, especially as an artist who spends a lot of time singing songs that are critical of the status quo, that are sometimes critical of my own government, that are critical of viewpoints that to me seem an impediment to collective growth and progress. And still the invitation came. And when I asked what kind of music they wanted me to sing for 2 weeks in the Caribbean while I was doing workshops and concerts and command performances for various dignitaries, I was told that they were particularly interested in the segment of my music that related to anthems and ballads of the labor movement and of the civil rights movement in the United States. I thought, okay, This is interesting. If you had asked me in the Bush administration if I would ever be a representative of the United States of America and a cultural ambassador, and that they would specifically invite me to be a little bit further to the left than I would imagine, that I would have the blessing of my own government to be a representative on foreign soil in this way, I would not have believed it. I would not have believed that that was possible. But I traveled through 6 different island nations in the Caribbean, was warmly received, and I began to understand differently why they had invited me into this segment of my repertoire. We got to Antigua Barbuda, combined, conjoined island nation, if you will, politically joined, 2 separate islands, but they are still part of the Commonwealth, though they have independence. And there is a regent from the throne that is present in every country that is still part of the British Commonwealth. I was informed that one was to relate to the Queen's regent with the same protocols you would the Queen herself. You do not approach unless invited. You do not extend a hand except to receive one that is offered. You never hug. You don't try and kiss the Queen's regent. You take several steps backward after speaking before you turn your back on the Queen's regent. The protocol was quite remarkable. And I set up for a show. It was a bit of a nightmare. The air conditioning was out in the hall. You can imagine Antigua Barbuda in July with no air conditioning, with like 112% humidity. The very antithesis of this region of the world when it comes to the weather. Yeah, meteorology is a little bit different there. And I went into this hall. I was expected to wear a full suit everywhere I went publicly with the State Department. The only suit I had that fit me when I left was thin wool, but it was still wool. And that was a hardship for me throughout the trip. But it was just protocol. It was expected. It was assumed. So we do a sound check in the hall. It turned out that the sound system was out too. All they had was a very large Hartkey bass amp with 2 inputs, and we put an SM58, a Shure microphone in one channel and my guitar in another channel, and I played with the EQ on the amp to try and make me coming through a bass amp sound like music for the Queen's regent, her entourage, and all of the assembled dignitaries. I was like, this is a nice first step. And I was already off my game a little bit because I had been on the air that afternoon on a local radio station, and the gentleman listened to a few of my songs, and he said, "You seem like a very patriotic man." I'm not accused of that very often. He said, "You sing songs of the people and how much you love the people and how much the people matter, and the people are the heart of any country. We receive this as deeply patriotic." And I thought, that's interesting. I'm a patriot here. I like this. I like the invitation to take on that identity. So there I was, and I started singing my songs. And the Queen's regent starts singing along. Her honor guard, she was in her, I'm guessing, late 70s, and her honor guard was in his late 60s, but a military man, and you could see it in his impossibly precise posture. And I saw him throw a few side eyes to the Queen's regent. I don't think he'd seen her sing before. Well, then we got deeper into some of the songs from the civil rights movement, and she begins to clap. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. This was clearly brand new behavior in the honor guard's experience of the Queen's regent. After the show, I was beckoned forward after giving a full concert in a hall in Antigua Barbuda in July with no air conditioning in a wool suit. I was really not the sort of person you wanted to get overly close to. And still, I was beckoned forward to meet the Queen's Regent. And she extended her hand, I extended mine. She held my hand a conspicuous length of time. I thought, I'm surely breaking some protocol, and I could see on her honor guard's face that this was making him uncomfortable as well. And then finally, she just hugged me. She hugged me. She just kind of, you know, and I apologized for schwitzing, and she said, it's the Caribbean. This was no big deal. She proceeded to tell me about going to school in Harlem in the early 1960s, and that her parents had gone to school in Harlem in the 1920s. And that's why they wanted her to go there. And it was our civil rights movement in the United States, the cultivation of a broader and more powerful black middle class and artist class that shined a model to the Caribbean that liberation was possible and that art had a role to play. And so she knew all of these songs that I was singing, and suddenly I understood why the State Department had wanted me to sing those songs, because those songs had left a beautiful imprint in the Caribbean. Those songs had led the way to independent governance for many smaller Caribbean nations. Those songs were lifeblood, and we're going to sing one of them now. Please join us if you know this one.
Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. I said wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who are these children dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. They must be the ones that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who are these children dressed in white? God's gonna trouble the water. They must be the children of the Israelites. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who are these children dressed in blue? God's gonna trouble the water. They must be the ones that's coming on through. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who are these children dressed in black? God's gonna trouble the water. They must be the ones never turning back. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water. Wade gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. I said God's gonna trouble the water.
Song that got the Queen's Regent standing and clapping and trying to get the younger people in the room standing and clapping with. It was a remarkable moment. And afterward, when I did get to speak with her, and she shared with me her life story and her parents' life story and her personal kind of spiritual and political evolution as informed by the civil rights movement in the United States, I suddenly understood everything differently about why I was there and what I could accomplish. That was at the beginning of my trip. Fast forward 10 days toward the latter part of my trip, and I was in Grenada. And I had heard many stories about Grenada growing up and the U.S. involvement and why we had invaded. And near the U.S. Embassy, there was the side of a building that was painted black and had the stars and stripes on it with a sign that said, "Thank you, USA." I wanted to understand that better because the narrative I had been told in the United States by progressive communities is that there was no reason for the United States to be involved in Grenada, that this is something a president had done to shore up his numbers and look bold and tough. And I asked the chargé d'affaires, when we have embassies somewhere and we don't have an ambassador there, the person in charge of the embassy is referred to as the chargé d'affaires. The person in charge, but it sounds fancier in French. If it's going to be your title, you know, the chargé. And I asked the chargé about it, and he said, yeah, sometimes people paint over it, you know, kind of as a bit of rebellion, and it's the grandmothers that are out there the next day repainting that side of the building with the U.S. flag and the sign that says, "Thank you, USA." Why would they do this? Because the Soviets helped educate hundreds, if not thousands, of young professionals from the Caribbean. They offered them schooling for free in Soviet universities around the world. And then they went back and they had an idea that people had power. This is, to be clear, not a defense of the totalitarian or authoritarian aspects of the Soviet regime, but an awareness that there was good that also happened. And part of that good was educating people around the world in civil engineering, in medicine, in really pragmatic skills that were required for people to help build their own countries and make them stronger. It was the Soviet response to the decline of colonialism in trying to create more places where more people had access to more resources and more knowledge and more education. And many of these students traveled to these universities, and they came back to Grenada with the idea that Grenada absolutely should be a different kind of country. They had separated from England, and yet the sort of nepotism that had run Grenada when it was a colony was still holding over into what should have been a true democratic republic. And this young group of rebellious academics decided that they were going to stage a peaceful overthrow of their government by ensuring that there was a democratic election. And they got a socialist ticket elected democratically. They did have a bloodless revolution and a transformation, and they began creating what they had witnessed, what they had received the benefit of, which were public schools, public hospitals, public institutions that allowed everybody access to the services and the care that they needed. And then about 14 months after that bloodless revolution, Grenada descended into civil war because people who were more inclined to use violence as a tool of transformation witnessed that there was something ripe for the taking, and they did. And it was a country at war with itself, literally sibling against sibling, cousin against cousin, in a nation whose population is roughly that of Evanston, Illinois. They were dealing with a civil war. And Barbados and several other stronger Caribbean nations kept appealing to Ronald Reagan to invade and to put that nation on a better path. And of all the people, Ronald Reagan said, I cannot invade a sovereign nation that has not provoked an attack. I need someone to invite the United States there as a peacekeeping force, someone with constitutional authority. The problem was the top 25 people with constitutional authority had been assassinated. They found someone who was, I think, the equivalent of the Undersecretary of Agriculture, who was in exile but was the highest ranking constitutional authority available. He came to the United States and said, please, Mr. President, would you send a peacekeeping force to Grenada? And he did. They signed the documents, the diplomatic documents that invite one country into another, and the United States showed up and they disarmed a civil war. There was a lot of talk about medical schools and people being held hostage, but the conflict had been simmering for a long time, and we involved ourselves long enough to remove the weapons and help a country get back on its own democratic pathway. And then we left 6 weeks later. The charge asked if there was anybody I wanted to connect with while I was in Grenada, and I said, absolutely, I would like to meet with organized labor here. If there is organized labor here, I would like to meet with these people. And he said, you know, I've really wanted to reach out to that sector of Grenada because a lot of the people who were involved in the original peaceful revolution, the democratic revolution, had been imprisoned, and when they got out, they got involved in organizing labor. But many of them went right back into academia. Not only that, many of those that were incarcerated for their role in the revolution, not the civil war that followed, but the original revolution, they tried to sentence some of them to death for the chaos that they had instilled. And the Queen stepped in and said, there is no death penalty in the Commonwealth. You may not sentence people to death. So they sentenced many of them to life in prison. And what did these people do? They built a university inside the one federal prison in Grenada. And all of the street urchins, all of the people that were in for petty theft and petty drug crimes and other smaller crimes had the opportunity to study with world-class professors in multiple disciplines while they were incarcerated. They got accredited so that when they earned an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree while they were incarcerated, that meant something. They got to go in the world with a diploma that they had earned while they were incarcerated. It was a remarkable extension of the revolution that did not quite take hold in the society in the ways that those young academics had imagined, but it did have a ripple effect, and part of it was changing the tone of the public dialogue. They chose to be diplomats even while they were incarcerated. They chose to believe in the possibility of nonviolent transformation, and they decided that this was now generational work, and that part of how they would get there was by educating young people, often from the hardest hit sections of society. It was quite admirable. And the gentleman that I got to meet with from the labor movement was the first cousin of the democratically elected socialist leader who had been assassinated, and the Civil War began with that and cascaded downward. But he was moved by the music. We talked about labor. We talked about the labor hall that they were still in the process of building, though it had been partially standing for nearly 2 generations. And he finally ventured a very brave statement in the presence of a musician who he did not know and the charge d'affaires of the United States. He said the best thing that the United States ever did for Grenada was interrupt a pattern of violence that was threatening our entire nation. The next best thing the United States ever did for Grenada was to go home 6 weeks later. You could perhaps learn something in other parts of the world from how that peacekeeping action happened in Grenada. And it was said very diplomatically, very graciously, but the charge and I looked at each other and we both received the gentle chastisement that was there. Because once you are functioning in that role, you're not a Democrat, you're not a Republican, you're not a libertarian, you're not a populist. You are a citizen of the United States of America, and you represent everything that we do. Later in that trip, I was asked to close it out with an appearance on Grenadian public television, the one truly national TV station in Grenada. And in a small country, people sort of double up on their roles. So they had a position that was referred to as the Minister of Culture, which I thought was very interesting. And he was sort of like the head of the National Endowment for the Arts and the head of the Federal Communications Commission rolled into one. Some of his work was administrative, some of it was artistic, but when he left his profession as an actor to take on this work, his one request was that he got to host a once-weekly television show celebrating art and culture in Grenada and guest artists who came to the country. So there we are on national television in July in a TV studio with old school carbon arc lights that kick off astounding amounts of BTUs. And I'm there in my wool suit, having had it washed several times in the 2 weeks I was in the Caribbean. And I'm playing my songs. There's the Minister of Culture and the Chargé d'Affaires, and I'm doing my thing. And finally, the Minister of Culture says to Mr. Link, the chargé, he says, "Mr. Link, we receive Mr. Jencks' music as being beautiful, songs of the people, songs of the power of the people, songs that are, in fact, at times critical of the government of your country. Why would the United States send someone who is overtly critical of his own country's policies as a representative of your nation to Grenada?" And in true diplomatic form, Mr. Link graciously said, "Minister, that's an excellent question. I'd like to let Mr. Jencks answer that." Woo. Now I'm really sweating bullets. But it was one of those moments when the right words came to me in the right order, in the right moment. Alan Shepard, when he was about to go up in his first rocket trip, flying a capsule, said a prayer that became known as the Shepherd's Prayer among astronauts and space enthusiasts. But what he said was, "Dear Lord, don't let me up." To which one of the other astronauts said, "Alan, you're on a live feed." But it became known as the Shepherd's Prayer, and in my mind I said the Shepherd's Prayer. I heard the words of Alan Shepard in my head, and I started speaking, and I said, "Minister, first let me thank you for the incredibly gracious welcome to Grenada. Thank you for being open to a multitude of ideas and artistic thoughts. As for your question, I think that the reason my country would send someone like me is because they want to demonstrate for a young democracy still really finding its way, that for democracy to thrive, there must be room for divergent opinions. There must be some defense of the minority, because rule by the majority over a discontented minority will lead to chaos, and your country has seen that. I think what my country is trying to say by sending someone like me here is that for a democracy to thrive, we need to hold space for all of those opinions and figure out how to build consensus so that it is not an oppressive rule of one idea over another, but shared power where we do our best to meet the needs of the largest number of people in a peaceable and efficient manner." And that was close to the end of the interview. I sang one song. The chargé and I went out to lunch. The minister went off to do his admin responsibilities. But it was one of the most singularly terrifying moments of my life as an artist to be asked that question and to feel the weight of the responsibility of speaking publicly in another country for my homeland, for my country. It was transformative. It helped me own the idea of being a patriot and recognize that the work of diplomacy is not just that for people who have their foreign service degree, not for people who have studied deep political science. It is the responsibility and the invitation to all of us to figure out how to be cultural ambassadors, to bridge those gaps in our own culture, in our own families, to bridge those gaps as we are able so that we can continue as peaceably as possible on a trajectory of growth, on that path of trying to meet the most needs for the broadest number of people. And each one of us has a role to play. Just like the glazers, just like the iron workers, just like the woodworkers in the cathedral at Chartres. We may feel like the janitor pushing the broom, but if we can find a place within ourselves where we can say, Your Eminence, I'm building a cathedral, where we can say, Congressman, I'm building a nation. Senator, I'm building a nation. Mr. President, I am building a nation. That is the invitation to all of us, I think, in the present moment. And the answer to that question, how do I engage in the work of diplomacy, will be different for every one of us. And yet, that invitation stands. Thank you for the opportunity to share these thoughts and these ideas with you. We're going to close out with a couple songs and a few more words. And Benji, I want to just say, was gracious enough to take words that I sent him and a recording on his iPhone from our rehearsal on Wednesday night and actually write a full choral script for this. So many thanks, brother.
Nothing about us without us is for us. Nothing about us without us is ours. Nothing about us without us is for us. Nothing about us without us is ours. Nothing about us without us in the struggle. We will stay in the fight. We will love with our whole hearts. We will be the light. We are in the struggle. We will stay in the fight. We will love with our whole hearts. We will be the light.
closing words? Or
Very quickly here. This has been wonderful so far, and it's not done yet. But when our service ends, you can join us for coffee hour across the patio and into the Johnson Room. And please, if say hello to someone you haven't met before or someone you haven't seen for a while. Thank you.
These closing words before our final song. From Harold George Nicholson. His father was a diplomat for England, and he himself also spent time as a diplomat for his home country. And I think these words carry great weight. These, then, are the qualities of my ideal diplomatist: truth, accuracy, calm, patience, good temper, modesty, and loyalty. They are also the qualities of an ideal diplomacy. But the reader may object, you have forgotten intelligence, knowledge, discernment, prudence, hospitality, charm, industry, courage, and even tact. I have not forgotten them. I have taken them for granted. Please rise as you are willing or able and join us in the closing song. And I say to you, with this gentle benediction, that even though our worship is ended, our service continues always. And also, thank you so much for the privilege of being here for the last 10 days. What an extraordinary gift to be present with you. I feel the current raging around me. Try to summon up my strength once more. I am weary on this journey. Afraid I will not reach that distant shore. I cry for help, feel like I'm sinking. There is no one near me I can see, but there you are in the water with me. You take my hand and guide me graciously. Will you come with me on this journey? With every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. There is a kindness in your smile and a gentleness within your speech. You reassure me, your love surrounds me. I know safety is at last within my reach. Will you come with me? Will you come with me on this journey? Every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. It's an illusion we carry with us as we wade on through the waters of our lives. That we must be strong and hold our own here. One more time, sing it. Will you come with me on this journey? Every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know, Lord, that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. I know, Lord, that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. With a good friend near me, I will carry on.
Go in peace, go in love.